Did you feel it? Well, on July 1st, 2026, SB 79 became law. And if you live in a qualifying neighborhood, the rules governing what can be built around you may have just changed dramatically. This is one of those moments where what you really don't know really can hurt you. Because if you own a home near a qualifying transit stop, SB 79 may change what can be built around you, what buyers may pay for land near you, and how your neighborhood could evolve over time. Today I want to talk about what SB 79 is, why it matters, and what it could mean for places like Chatsworth and other parts of the greater Southern California area. Hi, I'm Frank Spencer, Mr. Chatsworth, and on this channel we talk about real estate, local lifestyle, and the practical issues that affect homeowners, buyers, sellers, and neighborhoods here in the greater Southern California area, but specifically the San Fernando Valley. And today, I want to talk about a law that I think deserves a lot more attention than it's getting. That law is SB 79. And on paper, it's about housing near transit. But in the real world, this is about something much bigger. It's about land use. It's about neighborhood character. It's about the future footprint of some single-family areas. And it's about what happens when state law begins to override zoning expectations many homeowners thought were settled. So let's break this down in plain English. SB 79 is a California law that allows substantially denser housing near qualifying transit stops. And in some cases, that can include areas currently zoned for single-family residential use. That does not mean that every single-family neighborhood is suddenly open to unlimited development, but it does mean that in qualifying transit-adjacent areas, the old assumption that low-density zoning will always stay low-density, well, it's just no longer something homeowners should take for granted. SB 79 is built around one main idea. If the state wants more housing, especially in places connected to transit, then it should make it easier to build more housing near transit stops. That's the theory behind the law. And the logic is pretty straightforward. The state wants to increase housing supply, put more housing near transportation, reduce long commutes, and create more housing opportunities in built-out urban areas. And from a policy standpoint, you can understand that argument. But what makes this law so significant is not just why it exists, it's where it can apply. And this is why people need to pay attention. This is where the issue becomes real. In Los Angeles, SB 79 can apply broadly in areas that permit residential uses, including single-family zones. And if those sites are near eligible transit stops, all bets are off. That's the part many homeowners don't yet understand, because for years, many people bought into neighborhoods believing local zoning would largely define what could be built around them. And now the state is saying, wait a minute, that in some transit-adjacent areas, those assumptions, well, they may no longer hold the way they once did. And that's a major shift. Now, this part's important. SB 79 is not a blanket law that applies everywhere. It applies based on distance from qualifying transit stop. And the closer a property is to an eligible transit stop, the more generous the development standards may become. So, this is not a statewide free-for-all. It's a transit proximity law. And that means the question for homeowners becomes, how close am I to a qualifying transit stop? That's where the conversation gets local. And what could this mean for places like Chatsworth? When we talk about Chatsworth, we're not talking about some abstract planning map. We're talking about a real community with an established character. We're talking about an older single-story neighborhoods, established residential streets, and parts of the Northwest Valley that people often choose specifically because they don't want to feel overbuilt. But Chatsworth also has transit. So if the land near those transit points falls within the qualifying distance, the conversation changes. And once that happens, we're no longer talking about a distant Sacramento idea. We're talking about whether the future built environment near those transit areas could look very different from what it looks like today. And this is why it matters, because the law may not transform all of Chatsworth, but it may absolutely affect certain corridors, certain parcels, and certain edges of the community. This is the part that gets people's attention, and it should. When most homeowners hear housing near transit, they may think, maybe duplexes, townhomes, maybe a little more density. But SB 79 can go much farther than that. In LA, qualifying single-family parcels within a quarter mile or a half mile of qualifying transit stop may be able to support roughly 5 to 8 story development, depending on stop type, distance, and local implementation. That's a very different scale than what many homeowners picture when they hear the words near transit. And that's why I think this topic deserves a serious conversation, because once people understand the potential scale of the change, they realize this isn't a technical zoning discussion. It's a neighborhood planning discussion. It's a character discussion, and it's a value discussion. Now, to be fair, supporters of SB 79 would argue that the law is way overdue. They probably would say California needs more housing, we should build near transit, not far away from it, low density zoning is blocked, needed housing for way too long, and if we're serious about affordability, we cannot preserve every parcel near transit and low density forever. That's the Pro 79 argument. And whether you agree with it or not, it's a serious argument. This is not a random law. It's a part of a broader state push to increase housing production. What opponents and concerned homeowners would say? Well, on the other hand, many homeowners and neighborhood advocates would say state law should not casually override local character of established communities. They would argue that even if more housing is needed, there's still a real question of compatibility, neighborhood scale, parking, traffic, infrastructure, privacy, and the long-term effect on communities built around a very different development pattern. And I think that concern is legitimate too. Because whether someone supports more housing or not, it's hard to deny that a multi-story project next to an older single-story home creates a very different neighborhood pattern than what many residents expected when they bought here. My own view is this. This is exactly the kind of law homeowners need to understand before they decide whether it matters, because too many people assume zoning is static. Too many people assume what they see today is what they're going to see tomorrow. And SB 79 is a reminder that that may not necessarily always be true. Considering buying near transit, this is one of those what you don't know can hurt you issues. Not because change is automatically bad, but because uninformed ownership is risky ownership. What homeowners should be asking is simply, am I in or near a potentially affected area? And if I am, I want to know. Am I within the qualifying distance of an eligible transit stop? Is my parcel or land around me in an area where SB 79 could apply? What's this local implementation look like in Chatsworth? Could nearby single family or low density parcels become candidates for a much denser housing footprint over time? And if so, what could that mean for my property, my street, and the future of this neighborhood? These are real questions, and they deserve real answers. This is not just a policy topic, it's also a real estate topic because anything that changes land use expectations, development potential, neighborhood pattern, or future housing intensity can affect how buyers, sellers, investors, and homeowners think about value. Some people will see opportunity, some will see risk, some will see both. But either way, this is the kind of change that can influence the conversation around ownership and marketability. So here's the bottom line. SB 79 is now the law of the land. And while it does not mean every single family neighborhood is suddenly open to unlimited towers, it does mean that in qualifying transit adjacent areas, the future may look very different from the past. For some people, that represents progress, and for others, it represents a major shift in the historic footprint of neighborhoods they thought were protected by local zoning. Either way, this is not something homeowners should ignore. Because once a law like this is in effect, the people who understand it early are in a much better position than people who find out about it later. Now, if you found this helpful, please make sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. And I'd really love to hear from you in the comments. Do you think high density housing near transit is the right direction for California? Or you think SB 79 goes too far by allowing much more higher density housing in areas that have traditionally been single family? And if you'd like, I can also do a follow-up specifically on Chatsworth and the Northwest Valley, so we can take a closer look at where this may matter most locally. But for now, and until next time, I'm Frank Spencer, Mr. Chatsworth, and I'll see you around the neighborhood.